Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie, and today we are going to be looking at Holo Taco's Declassified 002 set. So if you're new to Holo Taco, last year they released their Declassified 001 set, which basically were these almost rejected prototypes that otherwise wouldn't have been released. And similar to last year, these are also going to be seasonal, which means if they do happen to sell out within a week or so, they will be restocked during the season, but they probably are not going to be restocked after January or February. I definitely have some thoughts on these, but I will save them for the end. For now, let's just get into the swatches. First of all, I almost forgot to mention, they're also launching a cute little spiral notebook. It's matte black with these really beautiful holographic embossed kind of details that include the Holo Taco motifs and the Holo Taco label on the front. On the inside, it says, "Hello, it's me," and a place to put your name or information. All of the pages are lined, and they all have this line on the top for the date and also a line for what you're wearing on your nails, which I think is super cute. The pages aren't numbered, but in the corner there is the little Holo Taco logo, and yeah, it's a super cute notebook. Unfortunately, it is limited edition though. Now getting into the declassifieds, the first shade we have is Going Solo, which is a black licorice base with a cobalt shimmer and a scattered holographic effect that was originally created for the Rock Candy collection. I was so shocked to read that because I thought this was going to be from the I Need Space collection. Obviously, this was passed up since Rock Candy had a much more colorful rainbow lineup, so it makes me wonder what other dark shades they almost went with. But back to the polish, as you saw, it had a flawless formula that was super pigmented, almost a one coater, but I did two for good measure. And this one isn't described as a crushed holo, and I think you can tell that by how sparse the little flakies are, but it's still a really beautiful finish. I also noticed that the shimmer shifted to this kind of purple in extreme lighting, but it was really hard to pick up on camera. I did find the blue shimmer in this one stood out, but kind of like other Holo Taco shades, it was just more on the subtle side, where it's going to be the strongest in direct light, sunlight, just any kind of brighter light setting. Once you get into indirect light or low lighting, the blue shimmer is much harder to spot, and it just kind of looks like a black polish with a holographic sparkle, which can still definitely be pretty, but it is nice when you see that flash of blue in certain lighting. Next we have Misfire, described as a sparkly burgundy red that has a micro glitter and red micro flaky formula. This was potentially the Garnet shade from their recent Birthstone collection, which honestly, I really wish that they went with. Every shade in that lineup had holo, and it was just so sparkly. And while I did think the Garnet shade was beautiful, it kind of lacked that birthstone sparkle that I think this one has. Since this shade is absolutely packed with glitter and flakies, it was a little bit on the thicker side. Not enough for me to add thinner, but enough that it was just a little finicky to get smooth application with, especially on the first coat. But as you saw on the first coat, I got incredible coverage, so I feel like if you're in a rush and you have short nails, you might be able to just get away with this in one coat. I still did do a second just for good measure, and I also would recommend using a glitter smoothing kind of top coat because this one is definitely on the chunkier side, where you honestly might want to use a peel off base for this one too. But that being said, I absolutely love this shade. I love sparkly glittery reds. I love that this had little flakies in there. It's just so dark and vampy, but still just so sparkly and beautiful. Definitely one of my favorites from this set. Then we have Glazed Over, which, yes, is another white shimmer, and this was a prototype from the Underglow collection. It apparently lost to Swan Song in a poll, but I am glad to see it released since I love white shimmers, especially when the shimmer is gold. Formula-wise, I found this one to be similar to the Underglow shades, which, as a reminder, I personally had a great experience with. Maybe I was just having a good painting day because normally I am pretty shaky. I'm not the best at painting my nails. Usually my swatches can be a little messy, but I just found that this shade especially had really great coverage. It was very even for me and it self-leveled really beautifully, but because it is one of those white crellies, I could see it being tricky for some people maybe, where depending on your application, it might be streaky or uneven. The most that I had with this one was just visible nail line, which is honestly expected. I thought it looked pretty good on 2 coats under my desk lighting, but it is a lot more noticeable once you see it in more natural lighting, especially in direct sunlight. But even in brighter indirect light and in lower lighting too, you could still make out a decent amount of nail line. So if that's not your thing, I definitely would recommend using a blurring base coat. I did actually go in with a 3rd swatch for this just to show you how much more coverage you get, and it definitely does help, but you can still see a little bit of nail line, which again, I would not fault the polish at all. It's just expected with white specialty finish shades. I personally don't mind seeing visible nail line, but I know that can be a deal breaker for some people, so if that's true for you, you might not like this one, but this was my favorite from the set, which I think should be no surprise. I mean, look at how that shimmer glows. And lastly, we have Camera Shy, a moody purple gray crelly base with pink shimmer. That was another Underglow prototype. I was so surprised to see 2 from the same set. This one apparently lost out because it was too gray and moody or sad compared to the light and airy vibe of the collection, which I thought was so interesting since they obviously went with some darker shades like Shadow Lake and Phantom Call, but we'll get into that in the comparison portion. But anyway, this one had another super smooth formula. If anything, I would say that this one, kind of like some of the Underglow shades, was a little bit on the pearlescent side. So you can see there are some sort of brush strokes, which is not to be confused with being streaky where the base is uneven. This ended up having really great coverage on 2 coats for me, but I could see this one being a potential 3-coater if you do thinner coats or obviously if your nails are longer than mine. I also noticed that this one had a subtle shift to this orangey amber color in indirect light, which I thought was really pretty. But yeah, this is a nice moody kind of purpley gray. I really like the base color actually, and even though I am a certified pink lover, I wasn't super crazy about this shade even though it has a beautiful pink shimmer. I don't know if it's because we just got the Underglow collection and so it's kind of weird to see these 2 prototypes for it so soon after, but it's still a nice shade. So even though this quad isn't meant to be cohesive by any means, I just wanted to show the full hand swatches for it in direct sunlight because I thought they were still pretty. I loved how sparkly they were. Again, my favorites are Misfire and Glazed Over in the middle. Now getting into comparisons, we're starting with Going Solo, and I wanted to show this next to Playing with Sapphire from the Birthstone collection because that is a bright, sparkly dark blue, but as I'm sure you can tell from the bottle alone, these are not dupes. Going Solo again has a black base with a much more subtle blue shimmer. The blue really pops in Playing with Sapphire while the holo pops in Going Solo. I also wanted to quickly show this next to Tanzanite Away, which was the December Birthstone polish. That one has a more true indigo blurple base and with a red shimmer, so it's not really comparable at all. And here it is next to Silent Library from the Dark Academia collection, which is a dark navy, but that one has a silver metallic flaky. I would say the closest to being a dupe was ILNP's Nocturnal from one of their Halloween collections a couple of years ago. That one is a black base with a cobalt shimmer and a hollow sparkle. And I thought I could also show it next to Mooncat's Midnight Rider, which on paper has a very similar description. This one just has a slightly larger holographic glitter, but surprisingly, they still just look different on the nail, where Going Solo really stands out the most with its holographic sparkle. Or maybe it's better to say the lack of the blue shimmer. I feel like the blue shimmer just glows a bit more in Mooncat and ILNP, but again, that's what lets those holographic flakies really shine in Holo Taco. Next, for Misfire, we of course have to look at it next to Gosh Garnet to see what could have been. Like I mentioned before, Gosh Garnet doesn't have any holo, it's just a multi-chrome. So something a little bit more similar I thought was Naughty List, which is one of their OG kind of glitter formulas that was retired unfortunately. Misfire is a little bit more complex, I think, because it has these like flakies as well, but even aside from the formula, the colors are totally different. So in a way, Misfire is kind of like the combination of Gosh Garnet and Naughty List. I did also want to compare this to a couple of the I Need Space shades because it just kind of was giving me that vibe that it could fit in with them. Here it is next to Waste of Space, which is a black base, but it has this like strong red shimmer in there. But it's definitely a lot closer to Orbite Me, which was the burgundy crushed holo. These definitely look pretty similar in the bottle, but on the nail there's definitely a difference where Orbite Me is a lot darker, more vampy, and also missing a lot of that kind of sparkle and holographic and even just that brighter red sort of color. So I thought I could try to layer Scorched Earth to bring in that red shimmer as well as a flaky topper. And while it's not a one-to-one recreation, I feel like it kind of gets the vibe across. Moving on to Glazed Over, we obviously have to look at it next to Swan Song, which it lost out to. That one is a white crelly, but with a blue shimmer. And of course, I did also want to show this next to Milky White Shimmer, which is exactly as it sounds. But I wanted to layer Halogen Glow over Milky White Shimmer since that has a little bit more of a yellow kind of color to it, just to see if I could kind of recreate it, but I don't think that was really successful at all. It's definitely pretty, but there's just a lot more of that gorgeous, fiery, warm shimmer in Glazed Over. I also had to show this next to Mooncat's Memento Mori from their recent Fallen collection. That's another white crelly jelly base with a fiery shimmer, but it's predominantly red head on. And since I noticed Glazed Over's shimmer shifted to green in extreme angles, I thought I could also show this next to Mooncat's Green-Eyed Monster from their recent Pandora Unboxed collection. And surprisingly, these all just look super, super different, even when it comes to the base colors. Like obviously the shimmer colors are all different, so they weren't going to be dupes in the first place. But I feel like the base color in Memento Mori is a little bit more on the gray side. It's not a true stark white, and Glazed Over looks to be the most pigmented of the three. And lastly, for Camera Shy, we of course have to look at it next to the Underglow shades that it lost out to. The first one here is Shadow Lake, which is a moody gray base that I would say is a lot darker. And here it is next to Phantom Call, which is more of a similar purpley kind of base color, but this one has more of a multi-chrome shimmer that shifts from gold to pink in extreme angles. So on the nail, I'm wearing 2 coats of each, and you can see just how much lighter Camera Shy is, especially with its base color. Like when I'm moving my nail away from the light and you don't see the shimmer, you only see the base. It's pretty dark in Shadow Lake and Phantom Call, so I feel like Camera Shy definitely could have worked with the collection. I thought I had something more similar to Camera Shy, so I wanted to pull out Mooncat's Lovebomb from their Seasons of Persephone collection, but that one's more of a darker brown kind of base with this purple shimmer instead of pink, so it's not really close at all. Here it is next to Mooncat's Fields of Lavender, which I thought would be similar because it's a purpley base color with a red shimmer instead of pink, but that one is just overall a lot warmer and a little bit darker as well, so definitely not dupes. Not to mention the fact that Mooncat is also magnetic, but I'm showing it unmagnetized. I do have 2 more Mooncat comparisons, which I think are even closer. The first one here is Take Me to Your Leader, which is a beautiful dusty purple base with a strong coppery shimmer. And the other close one that I had was Mooncat's To All Who Ghosted Me, which was also from the Seasons of Persephone collection. That one has another gray, purpley blue sort of base color, but it is a little bit lighter than Camera Shy. I think it's most noticeable in more extreme angles of light, like when I'm moving my nail away from the camera, but head on they kind of look more similar in terms of the base color at least. Obviously all the shimmers are different, so they're not dupes. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for Holo Taco's Declassified 002 set. As always, I would love to know your thoughts on this little release because generally I don't have complaints about them. I mean, as you saw, I personally had a great experience using these polishes. The formulas were really nice, and I thought that they looked nice too, where they just were really pretty colors. I think I was still just mainly so surprised to see 2 of the 4 shades be from the same collection, and just a really recent collection where it only came out a couple of weeks ago. I think I was expecting like each of the shades to be from a different collection and just like more spread out through the year, because I feel like even the other shades are just really recent. But with the Underglow prototypes, I know so many people are gonna be so annoyed at having another white shimmer, but I'm not mad at it because I personally love specialty finish white polishes. I think they're super beautiful. So even though I do love Glazed Over, and I would say it's like my top favorite from this set, I feel like it definitely could have been saved for like a future release. And yeah, with the other shades, I kind of was expecting them to be prototypes from like earlier collections, where I think I said it for both of the darker shades, but they just kind of reminded me of like the I Need Space collection, and I would have loved to see like another prototype from that set. I would say my biggest gripe with these is in regards to their availability, not because they're seasonal, but just that they could potentially be retired next year. Granted, those chances are pretty slim because last year, of the 5 declassified shades that they released, 3 of them are now permanent, so they only retired 2. But I don't know, I feel like I just can't help but immediately think about that because they only just released those shades being retired like a few weeks ago. And then now that we're getting the second set, that's just immediately where my mind goes. And especially with January right around the corner, where Christine does her stream going over like the sales data for Holo Taco, and it usually includes a slide of what they're retiring for the year. So I can't help but just be like a little bummed out like thinking about that, even though I know logistically they have to retire things. It's just where my mind is at right now. It's hard to be like excited for them knowing they're not permanent, but I guess, you know, they could be depending on how they sell, I guess. And please don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say this to like encourage FOMO or anything. Like, please don't buy these just because there's a chance they might be retired next year. I mean, as you saw during my comparison portion, there are other shades that are like very similar vibes, like even if they aren't exact dupes. I just wanted to share my thoughts and grievances because again, I do think these are really beautiful polishes and they performed well. So it would just suck to think of, oh, they're gonna be retired, or at least some of them are, because chances are it would be Glazed Over, which is my favorite from the set. So, you know, that's gonna be a bummer, but I get it at the same time. So anyway, those were my thoughts, and I would love to know yours down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.